Welcome to If Taps Could Talk, a brand new series in association with Beamish. Lads, there's nothing better than an Irish pub, and let's face it, they're like sacred spaces here in Ireland. The best pub has the perfect spot for you to sit down and watch people go by. You know what, sometimes the decor hasn't been changed in a good while, and you know the barman has seen and heard it all. Pubs aren't just about drink, there's so much more to it. But you know what makes having a pint even better? That shared experience with someone else. Across this series, we are going to be looking at some of the most iconic pubs in Ireland. The ones with genuine character, untold history, and bucket loads of charm. We'll be looking at what makes each pub so iconic and why it's held so dearly to the locals. So whether you're here for the company, the chat, or a pint, pull yourself up a chair and let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome to If Taps Could Talk. We are in one of my favourite pubs in Dublin. It's Cumiskeys in Broadstone. This pub is steeped in history from the Easter Rising when people used to be hiding out in here. The last 2.5 centuries, if the taps could talk, the stories they would have. Even to this day and age as well. The Lewis now goes past it, and back, what 100 years ago, you would have had the Dublin trams as well. To the left of me here, you got the bust of Ronnie Drew and Luke Kelly, two Dublin legends. If taps could talk today, we are in Cumiskeys in Broadstone, and I'm so excited to be chatting to my guests today. When you're thinking about Bohs, Kneecap, humanitarian work, there's so much I have to talk to this man about. It's Dan Lambert. How are you?
Good, good.
Cheers, man.
Sludge it.
Oh, nothing better than a pint every once in a while. Where to begin? Like, do people now chat to you and like tell us a story about whatever it is? Because so much has happened in the past 10 years with you. Do you ever get a time just to sit back and go, I've relaxed?
Yeah, no, probably not the relaxed bit. It's like a bit of a, I don't know, it's probably a bit of a cross. I don't sit still ever, you know, and I would love to be able to. My partner says that to me all the time. So now I tend to, if a day off will be like painting a skirting board or, you know, cutting down a tree or something silly, but that's just, just the way I am type of thing. So not too often.
We're in Cumiskeys. Can you tell us about this pub, what it means to you?
Yeah, I love this pub. Thankfully, hopefully not too many people listening and end up coming here because a lot of people don't know it. There's a Cumiskeys up near Phoenix Park. I think a lot of people know that pub, and a few times I've said to people I'll meet in Cumiskeys and they've ended up there. But it's just it's a cracker. Like, it's been, as far as I know, it's been here like 150 years, and across the road would have been the Great Western Railway. So where the Lewis stop is, that would have been, you could get a train from there to Clifton. You know, and like Ireland had an amazing rail network 100 years ago that we don't have anymore. So I think this was a place that was, it's so, like the streets beside us, Palmerstown Place across the way, that big role in the East Horizon, and just a lot has happened in this area. You know, there would have been a spur that came off the Royal Canal and it would have come down and had a terminus, and you've got King's Inn here, and there's just so much history, but the pub's sort of hidden away off the main road, so you don't really see it unless you know it's here. But inside, like it's beautiful, and I suppose you come in and it's sort of, I'm not a big fan of TVs in pubs, or you know, even music, unless you want to go out to listen to a DJ. And it doesn't have any of those things really. There's one small telly, but it's not overbearing. You can just have a chat. And this area we're sitting in with one big wraparound couch, you don't really see them anymore.
Is there any night that you can remember here having a pint of Beamish with your friends that you'll kind of go, oh, that was here?
Loads, yeah, loads. So like after Paddy's Day, it's a great place to come. The parade starts just behind us. And on Paddy's Day, you'd think it'd be ram, but it's like nearly so close to the parade that it's not. And it's you can always get to see here. And Paddy's Day is great. We've been here the last couple of Paddy's Days, and you can hear, if you come here early in the morning, just when they've opened, you can hear all the bands warming up. You know, come back here when the parade's over. It's a good day.
What I like about you is that you're a man of community. Like, when you think of all the things that you've achieved or things that you've done, kind of linking that with pubs. Kind of feel it's like that around here. There's a lot of bars like this.
Yeah, I think any pub, like pubs have a role in terms of just social connectedness, and like I think even with Bohs, say, like, you know, we've got bars in Dalymount, and in one way you'd look at them and say, well, the club earns money from the bars, and that is true, but I think it's much more important than that, because I suppose lots of clubs maybe don't have a pub, and using the football example, or a football club without a pub, is that people kind of come and they go, and they maybe all they're experiencing is the game. Whereas with Dalymount, you come in and people get to meet each other and chat to each other and get to know each other a bit better. And the same is true then if you extend that out beyond football just to an area, I suppose. It's, you know, a lot of the places that people would have met in terms of a corner shop and things like that are sort of gone. And the pub, you even see it now. I was away recently, it was a restaurant we were in, actually away with Kneecap, and like a fucking robot came over to service. I swear to an actual robot arrived to the table, and you pick everything, and it went off, and it came back with the food. Like it's not. I think that's a good thing, you know. And the idea, obviously, is one, it's taking someone's job, which is terrible, but you're not interacting with anyone bar your little closed group, and that's.
I could have felt coming in today and chatting to Stephen behind the bar. Within like 10 minutes, we made a connection about pubs. There was one in Portmarnock we were talking about. There was one over by Bohs Bridge. I think you're right. I think we are kind of going to lose that conversation and that chat. There's something beautiful about Phibsborough, isn't there?
Do you know why it's called Great Western Square?
No, never knew.
So the Irish name for that is Railroad Square, because it's the Great Western Railway. So they were housing for railroad workers.
Wow, okay.
That's why it's airing that. Like, and grey housing, you know, I think housing today and the problems with it, like you work for the Great Western Railway, you got a house there and a big green open space where you would have lived. But now there's there's obviously loads of characters in every area and around Phibsborough. It's just, I think the sense in this part of the city, like I was mentioned earlier, whether it's, and you've, like even there, the connection with where you were living, there's a lot of history around here and a lot of it's still sort of visible. You know, you think of maybe certain parts of the city you're going around now, and I looked recently with talking to pubs, the Bernard Shaw, the old Bernard Shaw, and you know, being demolished, and there was a whole street there with pizza place, and it's all gone, and there's just this massive chunk of glass going up that might as well be in Washington or Manchester. Yeah, that has nothing, you know, distinctive about it aesthetically or otherwise, and then you lose all of these places. But this area, thankfully, it still has a lot of the kind of charm maybe of that was here before. You know?
I used to love walking into town through here, down by the Lewis tracks, always having a gawk in here to see who is in here. And I think that's the best thing about this pub is the windows. And we just saw Lewis go past us, like the old meeting the new all the time.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the big windows are class. Like just in terms of even the light coming out, you know, on a winter's day or something, you're going past, it's hard not to nip in.
We need to talk about Bohs. Your start from that, being a kid, right up to now. That is an incredible journey that you've been on. Did you think that you would get to where you are from back in the day, or was it just the passion that you had for the club?
Yeah, no, I don't think I went like loads of other people go. I went with my dad and just went to see the games. It just sort of all happened accidentally, I suppose. Like there was. You know, it's something that's part of your life, and then because of the structure we have, anybody can get involved. Around the time where we were really in trouble, 2011, 2012, I was kind of studying kind of business and marketing. I thought I had some ideas that could be useful, and at the time, rightly or wrongly, whatever the way things were, like there was no achievement in going on to the board of the club. Sounds very, you know, official. It's literally just the other members, you know, are happy that you go and take a volunteer role. And there's a lot of responsibility in a way because it's a very old institution. But at the time, we were not in a good place. That's putting it mildly. So a lot of people, you know, didn't want to be going into a position like that. There was the chance. I think we were balance sheet insolvent. So from even a legal standpoint, there was a way things could have went that people perhaps could have had their own personal property or whatever at risk. Like I was living in, you know, my mom's house. I didn't have anything like that. So there's no risk for me, and it was just an exciting thing to maybe try and do and to put some ideas into play. And then it just kind of grew from there, I suppose, over the years. I was on the board for 10 years and then became the COO. But it's really a collective effort at the club. Like we've thousands of members, you know, and everybody digs in. So many volunteers involved in so many things. Like, you know, even the last few weeks getting ready for the season start, the amount of people who do work for the club free of charge is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. It's really those people who deserve massive credit. But that idea, like you talk about, like a community of people that we can exist and compete, and we found it hard the last few years. Like the results on the pitch haven't been where we want them to be. But with the fact that we're existing, and I think in the next few years we'll prosper against other entities that are owned by very wealthy people. And can do that as a group of ordinary people, you know.
Do you think it's the passion that the community have in Phibsborough and everywhere? Do you think that's what's keeping the club, you know, going from strength to strength? Is that passion and that kind of sense of ownership that they have, that they're part of the club? Yeah,
I think there's a few things probably going on. I think that after COVID, there was huge increases in crowds around all the clubs. We were ahead of the curve. Our crowd's been growing before that. So I think there was this recognition maybe that people that sitting in front of a TV and watching a game maybe isn't the way you're supposed to enjoy any sport. Although you do sometimes that, you know, going out and supporting your local club is important, mixing with people. But I think for Bohs in particular, like we've seen, I suppose, huge growth in lots of areas of the club, and I think the idea that we can do it as a collective so that you can feel a part of what's happening, but also that we're able to stand up and challenge and champion things that are important to the local area, whether that's work with people who are homeless. We did a homeless food collection at the game last night. We only yesterday had a big project in a school in Ballymun about anti-racism and things.
Is that hard to go to the board and say, look, we want to do something like this that no one else is doing in the league, that are like, we want to go to those schools, we want to create something for the LGBTQ plus community? What's that like for you to go in and say, right, this is what we are and who we can be? Yeah,
no, it hasn't been hard at all, to be fair. Like, I think there's probably some, and like it's always a pains to point it out, and I think it's obvious to most people. Maybe you're speaking to 10 people on Twitter, but like our community staff aren't linked to our football side in any way. Their job is to do community work, and when their work is funded. So we apply for funds to do really good community work, and if our applications are successful, those staff work on that area. So there is no crossover. So no, it's not hard at all. It's the type of stuff that clubs should do and should play a role in. And clubs have an ability, not just football clubs, GAA clubs, any type of club actually, have an ability to reach young people in a way where you're meeting them at a level where there's a level of respect from the young person to the Bohemian Football Club, or it could be a GAA club, or it could be anything else. That already exists, and sometimes with certain groups of young people, it can be hard to find things that they have a level of respect for. And often that's because of maybe the socio-economic environment they've grown up in. The state hasn't shown them respect. But if you take, say a kid in Ballymun yesterday who may have engaged with some Bohemians community work, a lot of these kids already support Bohs. So there's a level of trust or admiration or whatever it is exists, and we can then use that to do some good work with the kids.
Where has been the most random place seen a Bohs jersey? Because they're everywhere.
Well, I went to Ghana 2 years ago, actually with the FAI, and there was a guy in a rip-off Bohs Bob Marley shirt in Ghana.
Where, did you go up to your man in Ghana? Did you?
No.
Where did you get this?
We were driving. No, we were driving because it was just it was an amazing place to go, and we were driving on this little minibus. Just saw one. But there was lots for sale of the Marley one in Africa, because people were sending me links of a lot of these kind of Facebook groups in, across particularly West Africa, and people selling counterfeit Bohs shirts.
That Bob Marley one, that was something special. Can you tell us anything about that, or what was the crack with that?
Yeah, I've told the story before, but basically, so I was trying to look at the history of Daily Mounts. There's a lot of stuff that's happened there that isn't to do with football. And probably the most famous event, non-football, and one of the most famous events is the Marley gig, for lots of different reasons. His last outdoor gig, only ever time he played in Ireland. Loads of bits of folklore around it. But I had no idea if no one would buy it, and it'd be just people would laugh at it. So we didn't actually order any. We didn't produce any. We did a photo shoot, and we had 2 shirts. That's all we had. And we launched the shirt, and I bought the image that was on it. Was from, we could probably say it now, it was from Shutterstock. And we had a right to produce 1 million of them. We paid a lot for the image of Shutterstock. Yeah. Ran it by them, everything was sweet. And I said, we won't order any because we don't know if we'll sell any. Mm-hmm. We'll say it's a pre-sale. And then we'll see how it goes, and we'll order the shirts. And in the first few hours, I have the Shopify login, and that was 5 grand, 10 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand. And I was at home drinking with people I used to live with, and I was just like, this is we've won the lotto here, and the thing just kept going up and up and up. And I was like, Jesus, I'm drinking, everything's great. And then the next morning, I had a legal letter from the Marleys, from their legal representatives, to say a cease and desist, you need to stop and you need to destroy any that are made. Now, we hadn't made any, we had 2. And then a couple of hours later, all the Marley images in Shutterstock disappeared, the ones that were up for sale. And I was starting to panic. And then our kit supplier, O'Neill's, the last thing they want is a big court case.
With the Marleys.
Yeah, and they're ultimately, but there weren't any made. They thought they were made. So anyway, we couldn't do it. And I was really, I'd say I was pretty distraught, because there was so many newspaper articles about it.
But it did the job. I kind of felt it did the job. It put Bohs on the map again for something that was different to the football. And I thought it was kind of cool. Though. Yeah, but still though. I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, I thought, where I was I was getting so many messages saying, congrats, great shout, knowing that the thing looked like it was falling apart. And it was falling apart.
I would have thought. No, I would have thought like, where else would you get? Like, you know, please tell me you've that letter hung up somewhere to go.
This is where the O'Neills have one, and I've won the original. But now then we went ahead. We redesigned the shirt, and we put the kind of Black Panther solidarity fist on it that represents kind of resistance and resistance to oppression, lots of different movements, and raised money for charity. And a lot of them sold, but not the same number. And it was always in the back of my head like, this is a good idea, because this should have happened. So I kind of kept that. About a year later, went back to the Marley's legal reps and sort of asked them, could we have a conversation? You know, where it wasn't at the point where they were like, why the fuck are you using our image? And they agreed, and we relaunched it like 2 years later. They saw, and I think they saw that we were a fan-owned club. I think it was really important to them. That wasn't a private entity, that we're not-for-profit.
And the connection as well that you both had together that they probably didn't even know about.
Yeah, the gig was a real thing. And I think too, what happened was one of their sons, one of them had given an interview to the BBC, and he said it's the dopest shirt I've ever seen, the one that was pulled. So I was like, well, look, one of the family like it, you know.
That's brilliant.
And it happened in the end.
I love the fact that you're so good when it comes to advertising. Like, I think people know Des Kelly straight away as soon as that's a massive link you have with them.
Yeah, the Kelly family, and they deserve huge credit, because like we talk about like this area and stuff. Like Des, as far as I know, is from Summerhill, from the north inner city, and they're kind of synonymous. They're obviously much bigger than just this area now, but they're known around this area so much, and we can't actually figure out how long they've supported us. So the signs in the 1970s, they've been main sponsor so many times for the vast majority of the last 20 years, and they're a family-owned company, and all the siblings are lovely people first and foremost, but they really buy into what we do, and it's a really nice thing actually, because like, it is important to have good commercial partners at a club, and we have some big companies like DHL and Dublin Bus, and we're really grateful to have them. But there's also something really nice about having a family-owned local, you know, Dublin company on the front of the shirt, and they've been there for so long.
Like the Des Kelly ads, you know, it's the things that people always remember, you know. He's your only man. I remember driving up from Dublin all those years, and you'd go past Daily Man, and then you'd see the Des Kelly big business right beside it, which is cool. I like that.
That's great. One fella got onto us, like, said it to them, one fella, and apparently it was true. In Cork, apparently, if you rolled a really big spliff, it was called a Des Kelly, because it was like a carpet. I swear, and someone messed, and I was like, what? And then I asked some Cork people, and apparently that was a thing. So there was some weird link with like weed and Marley and Des Kelly in Cork.
How'd you go back to the older fellas and girls that are working in Bohs going, this is going to Beyonce? Like, is there ever a time that we're going, Dan, what are you doing? Like, where are we going? Where are we going at this stage?
Not sure if it's just been, it's kind of just grown, like, and I think on lots of them, like, we're sort of nearly become the norm now. Back then, like, that was a mad idea that kind of worked, but it's shown sort of that, like, what I think about why these things work for us is that, like, if you think about it, if this table is world football, right, you have to accept, without being dismissive or anything about the League of Ireland, is that we're a very small country in world football, and there's been great strides made recently by all the clubs. The Aviva game, the transfer of Mason Millier, Shamrock Rovers in Europe, all of these are brilliant things, and they've actually set a new level. But still, we can only exist at a certain size because of our population and our proximity to the Premier League. But if you get away from just the football performance piece, and you look at the ethos of a football club, that can link in with anybody in the world. And because what we do as a football club is quite rare, and it's becoming lesser and lesser, and there is a backlash against the kind of state ownership and the level of finance in lots of leagues, particularly in England. And you've seen now, I suppose, there is a move away from, and a kind of a kickback, I think, against some of the kind of Man City type models. Then we can connect with people all over the world on the basis of our model is something that's rare and should be protected. And those people can link in, buy a shirt, perhaps come to a game, we get lots of tourists, and feel a link and an affinity to us that is based more around the structure of the club. And that actually helps us perform better on the pitch, because those people are linked to us. Being
in the Aviva, what was that like? Like, that's the highest crowd ever, I think, in the Aviva
for a league game. Yeah, I wanted to, like with a lot of credit to the FAI. So I over the last few years, we've seen, like, the biggest cup final attendance ever is Bohs and Pats, and that broke a record set in 1945, I think it was. There was a Bohs Rovers Cup final like 80 years ago, and the 2023 Cup final beat that. So we knew, because I could see the ticket sales, there was a lot of Bohs fans at that game, more than we would have had, a lot more than we would have had in recent, like, recent decades. And the Bohs Rovers game is the big fixture. Like that's the big fixture in Irish football. It's when everyone knows. So, I was sort of thinking, if our fan base has grown so much, Shamrock Rovers fan base has grown so much, this is the big game, what would happen in a league game? And there was a financial risk to doing it for us because it was our game, but I just thought it was worth trying to do, and the FAI were supportive of it, Rovers were supportive of it, and like 33,000 people came to see a league game. Like, that's phenomenal. It shows where we are in football,
Is it frustrating sometimes knowing that this is in everyone's back garden, Bohs or any other clubs, and you need those people there every day in, day out to be going to these matches because the quality is incredible, the crack is incredible? Is it frustrating sometimes that there's not more people going to it or more people?
There can't be at the moment, actually, because we're sold out every single game.
Wow.
We played recently on Monday night against Drogheda, it's a Monday night, a game sold out, so you can't get a ticket. So it's more frustration, I suppose, maybe at facilities, and that's linked to state investment. There's no other sport in the country where run-of-the-mill league games you cannot get a ticket for. Rugby, GAA, basketball, you can go through all the sports, and League of Ireland is the sole exception to that. And 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, that's across the league, but a little bit longer for us, but you couldn't give away tickets. And now people can't get them. And we should capitalise on that. It's a good thing. People going to watch live sport is a positive thing, especially a participation game. It's a lot better than going to watch horse racing or greyhound racing in terms of what the sport does. You get young people into a participation game, and it doesn't get the same level of sport as other sports do.
That's wild, isn't it?
So I think it is changing people. I think people recognise that now. It's in the programme for government in terms of support for League of Ireland academies and things. So I think it's slowly coming.
Can we talk about Kneecap?
Yeah.
What a 2 years that has been. Mm-hmm. How did that come in fruition with you? When did you get to start kind of hanging out with them?
So I went, he loved this because Beamish. I went up to Belfast to meet with a guy, Donald Fallon, who was a friend of mine, and he was studying up there, and we went on a bit of a pub crawl about history because he's a historian. So it's kind of, we were going around Belfast, and he was talking about the history of Belfast. Really interesting. And then Rady was there meeting her mate, and then we all met up in a pub later that night, and literally they were beside us in the pub, but I didn't know who Kneecap were. I think I might have heard the name. Wouldn't have known any songs or anything like that. And they were speaking Irish, and I had a good few pints, but I thought this was cool. I just didn't expect one in Belfast. I didn't know about the amount of Irish speakers in Belfast. I would have seen people, I would have thought you'd hear someone speaking Irish in a pub. My perspective then was Ring or Connemara or Guido or something, but not in Belfast, not in an urban environment, and certainly not young fellas. I thought this was cool. So I said to Rady, how do you say that's a nice jacket in Irish? I think Liam had a nice Adidas jacket on. And then they recognised Rady, and then we all got chatting. And that was it really. They were coming to Dublin a few weeks later, and we met up and just kind of became friends before being a manager or anything like that. And then they asked me a few weeks later, a couple of months later, in the Fisborough House in Clark's, at Nishi. So yeah, kind of just chance. There was no...
And by that stage, was there talk of a movie by that stage, or was it just you had them from kind of nearly the get-go then?
Yeah, no, there wasn't talk. This around, what year was that, 2018, 2019? There was no talk of a movie at all. The lads are just, there's just so many, there's so many good qualities as people, and they're very funny, they're very intelligent, they're very witty, they're a lot of fun to be around. They've no ego at all, and they treat everyone exactly the same, and that hasn't changed as they've gotten. They're very infectious, and I suppose that was the basis of I had done some music management before. It wasn't something I planned on doing again. And it was just them, it was just them. Yeah. They're a lot of fun to be around in a way that's hard to describe, on lots of different levels. You can go and have a mad night or have a really serious conversation with someone and just very engaging. And no, at the start, some people wanted to make documentaries, and we wasted a bit of time. There was some kind of made this weird pilot thing in England, but there was no intention to, it was just, from my perspective, I thought they were class in terms of what they were doing. The music was brilliant, and it was good. It was a fun thing to do.
Have you ever got a text message to go, "Oh Jesus, what have they done?" Or do you encourage that, the crack that happens?
It might be the opposite. No. We all No, we like it's important. The most important thing, I think, for, like with the lads in the band, is that for them, the language was so important, and to push the language, and not just the language for the sake of the language, but the idea of people's identity, and that, you know, your identity and your sense of who you are is wrapped up in how you, and of course, how you speak, the language you use, and that is such a to take Irish and hip hop, like, and Belfast, like it shouldn't work. You know, so many people, I think, we're trying to like be less so messages like that. I've just been really so happy for them so many times. So people said to me, like, that'll never work. What is that? You know, and some of them met some of the major record labels a few years ago before we signed to Heavenly, and there was this implicit thing of it, I have to drop the Irish, or I will use the Irish, but like we need more verses in English or more big chorus in English. That was always the kind of and they've ignored that and done what they feel is right, and that's led to, like, you know, a great place now, and that deserves so much credit to have that, you know, to not.
It's a movement now, I think, more so than anything else. People are resonating with it.
Yeah.
Like if you're in Mexico, you're going to resonate with it. Have you had like any massive followers around the world that you've been like, Jesus, Kneecap's big here?
Yeah. No, there's been loads, and like even I think there was a thing at a report last week it was in the Daily Mail or something. Tom Hardy was out walking his dog in London, and like I think his dog ran at someone. So he had to take off the mask to like engage them, and there would happen to be a photographer there or someone. Anyway, someone gave the picture to the Daily Mail. It was him and Kneecap balaclava. But no, we get messages like all the time, and there was a message came in literally yesterday. The lads just saw it because they're in New Zealand, and it was the goalkeeper from the Palestinian women's national team, who I was lucky enough to meet when they came over to play Bohs last May, and she lives in Canada. So she's Palestinian, but her family were forced off their land, and they became refugees, and her family moved to Canada. And she sent a message, and I'm paraphrasing her, but she said she saw the film and it had a huge impact on her as a Palestinian. It's made her re-engage with learning Arabic so that she has younger sisters, so that she can pass on Arabic to her younger sisters, so that she can, when she has kids, pass on that so she can remain connected to her identity. And I'm like, it's like what you said there about being a movement. This is a Palestinian woman in Canada who has connected with a Kneecap film, not because of, and I'm sure she enjoyed the humour, and not because of the stuff with the dissidents, not because of stuff with, you know, the local Belfast stuff, because the overarching message there is the universal message about language and identity, and the erosion of people's language, identity and culture, mainly through capitalism, a lot of the time through oppression, whether that's, but ultimately, like, you know, the idea of the British Empire, it's capitalism, it's wealth, we're going to take all this stuff from Africa or Ireland or India or Pakistan to bring over here, and when we're doing that, we're going to kill your sense of who you are so you don't rebel against us. I think Irish people have been really, really good. I think I think there's measures to show it there. I think we're one of the most charitable nations on the planet. I think people have a really good grasp of situations that are bad, and whether that's things that there's plenty wrong with Ireland and there's plenty wrong internationally. And I think that most people in Ireland have this inherent kind of empathy and willingness to try and assist somebody who's in difficulty. And I think, some of the stuff in the last couple of years where you're giving airtime to individuals or parties that get no votes, it's kind of wild that they're given any platform, because, you know, time and time again, whether that's our own neutrality, which is under question at the moment, every poll done shows the vast majority of Irish people want to be neutral. You know, talk of fighter jets and stuff is absolutely insanity. And then Palestine, we see, the sport Irish people have. And I think that, that's just something inherently that Irish people are pretty good at. And we've come from a place where we were oppressed for so long that I think that maybe, a lot of people ask, why are Irish people like that? Well, we were the victims of all of this stuff. So it's probably not unusual that even though we didn't experience it, that, our very close relatives, and say for the lads, they did experience and still do experience, they are colonised and a part of this island. I think that we've been in America, the lads now, the messages coming in from New Zealand and Australia before they've even played there, they're meeting some First Nations people over there, they're meeting some elders and things like this, and they see in the lads a kind of a vibrancy and a kind of resistance that you can do that through your culture and maybe not through violence. So that's it. I saw
when Elton John shouted them out.
He did this morning.
Again.
Yeah.
How does that sit with you when you have someone as massive as him? He's just been on with Chapel Row, and the man just doesn't seem to stop. And then he shouts out Kneecap a few times. Yeah, I think what they see, there's been so many people like him recently where it's a bit, well, to pinch yourself, I suppose. Noel Gallagher comes to a lot of gigs now.
he's been to a few, and Paul Weller, who kindly enough lent his studio to the lads there recently. And I think I don't know, I haven't, they're obviously into the band, they're into the music, it's great, it's cool, it's great to have any fan. It's cool if they're well known and they want to talk about the band, that helps everybody. But I think what they see in the lads is just that sense of they're confident in who they are and they're saying it's real, it's real. I think just personally, when I was growing up, the bands I was into, there's lots of bands you can think of and you're like, the music's good, but who are they? Why would I get super invested in you? Because it's just quite bland. That would be my own way I grew up. The bands I tended to be into were bands where I thought that could be me and my mates. That could be me. I could be, Yeah. You're kind of going, and I think Oasis probably had that better than anybody, where that looked like, I think, to a generation of young people, that could be me. And I think there's some of that in the lads too, in terms of they're just ordinary in the best sense of ordinary. What they're doing is extraordinary, but they're just ordinary sound people.
So the past couple of years, it has been magical for Kneecap and for you, and to be part of the journey. Has there been any moment that would stick out for you that, in 20, 30 years time, you'll think back on, how did that happen? Did it really happen? I'm delighted I'm part of it.
Yeah, it's probably been low, because it's just happened. The way it's just what's happening, I suppose, at the time. I remember talking to your man, the guy Pat Egan who booked, who got Bob Marley to Daily Mount. I've interviewed him a few times, and he's a gent. And I said to him, "What was that day like?" And he picked up Bob Marley, and he said, "Like this." He said, "I was just putting on a gig." I drove him in from the airport. It was just what was happening. There's a little bit of that probably at the moment where you look, but sometimes you look to your phone and you're like, "Oh, that was cool." But I think when we went to Sundance last February, everyone knows the name Sundance, I think, but I had no idea what Sundance was. I've never been to a film festival. I had no clue what would happen when you got there, at all. Nor I think obviously what the lads have. So we went there with kind of just going to Sundance, and we had a big log cabin that was booked, and it's a beautiful place in the mountains with snow, and it was like a hot tub. And the second day, Sony bought the film, and just there was so much kind of media, and they were there, and we went to this mansion to meet the Sony people. They were throwing a party because they bought the film. I think that was probably one where I just, because the film up until then, I suppose, obviously I'd seen it and I thought it was a brilliant film, but it just, that didn't see it didn't. And then the other thing then more in the music was Glastonbury last year, because the 11:30 a.m. slot, and our fair play to our booker Ed for because he thought he was like, no, it's a good stage and we'll bring a big crowd. And I was like, at half 11 in the morning, no one, a lot of people aren't going to bed at half 11 in the morning, and we arrived down to that stage at 10:30, so that was 12 or 13,000 people, and when we arrived at 10:30, the rubbish was still there from the night before. And there was a line of cleaners, on the high vis things. Yeah. So they were backstage. I walked out to look at the stage, and it was just a line of people clearing the night before. And I was like, "Fuck! This could be, could be a real anticlimax."
Yeah.
Because everyone's we're all excited. I'm excited as our manager. Lads are buzzing to be playing Glastonbury, and it's like, geez, what? There's only a few hundred people, and they walked out, and the tent was full at 11:30 in the morning. And the guy who runs the stage said to me he'd never seen it. And he's ran that stage for 30 years.
One of the Gallagher brothers was there as well, weren't they?
That was later on. So they did a slot at 11:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. So 14 hours apart, or 15 hours apart. And all came to the later one. You kind of do that at Glastonbury's late night sets. But no, to get that amount of people was just unheard of.
And that trickled then afterwards, because then with Electric Picnic as well.
There's been so many of them lately where we're going to, I don't go to all the gigs with the lads, but in Spain, just in so many places where the tents are packed, and in the next year they're going to be playing all around the world, I think something like 30 countries going through the list, and they're going out predominantly in Irish, performing to just enormous crowds of people who are. And
are the crowd there's obviously going to be Irish people there, but is it for other people from other nationalities?
Yeah, it's less and less so. And it was kind of something we've thought about, because I think what you don't want to be is and there's nothing wrong with it, but you don't in terms of as a manager, you don't want to be going and just playing to Irish people abroad, because it needs to be bigger than that. And because of what you said earlier on about being a movement, that people connecting with it, maybe past the language and some of the more universal things that there's people going from all over the world. And in America, you're seeing that a lot too, where it's Americans,
I love the connection that they have with Beamish. You'll see a slab of Beamish there as well.
At Glastonbury, we brought the Land Rover. We've an RUC Land Rover, and that was full of trays. And it was hard to fit. And I was saying it was just stacked full of a lot of people at Glastonbury who had never at Beamish before I tried it for the first time.
That or you see Van. Like that, I never thought I'd see the day that would be down by the lighthouse at the opening, and then watching people go past not knowing that something incredible was going on in the cinema, going, "What in the name of Jesus?" That was at Sundance as well. Did I see that in the snow?
So that's the first one we did. Yeah, we that was, it's a different one, but we had one in America, and it was brought to Sundance, and we went to visit a town called Provo. The town of Provo is about 15 miles from Park City, where Sundance is. Like, what are the chances that the only city in the world called Provo was right beside Sundance? So we went to visit there in the Land Rover, and it was like, I don't think the Americans knew what to make of this thing, because they're, to be fair to them, like, and not to be fair, it's a bad thing, but some of their, military industrial complex police stuff is a hell of a lot bigger than an OUC Land Rover.
How do the people, like, from being from the south of Ireland and you when you go to the north of Ireland, what's the reaction to Kneecap around there that you can see from, I don't mean like an outsider, but you're from the south, like I'm presume the lads, their families have seen some crazy things throughout the years. What's it like seeing them do what they do up there?
No, I
hate saying up there as well, but in the north of Ireland.
No, I think like what's important about, because I think like I personally, like, so my own family would have been connected in ways to the Republican movement, so I probably had an unusual view as me in terms of I would know a lot about the North, and I would have went to the North a lot, and I would have had family members who were Republicans in a way that maybe a lot of other people from Dublin wouldn't. And that was, I think, when I first met the lads, I'd know, say, a lot of old kind of quite obscure Republican songs and stuff that they'd know, and that's just because of my upbringing and friends of the family and relatives and stuff like that. So I'd have a good understanding. I'm not from Belfast, but I'd have a decent understanding, I think, and that was something that we had kind of in common to chat about. But when you're up there, what's probably important is that there's this, some of the media down here love to say, like, young working class Protestants and people from the loyalist community and stuff are really into Kneecap. Like, we had young Spence, who's a loyalist rapper, come on and support the lads in the SSE. What they see isn't the past. They see this as being people like them doing something that they're into, and they're interested in it. And going around Belfast, I think Belfast is small, like, people in Dublin appreciate that. Belfast is a lot smaller than Dublin. And I think there's a real sense of pride, like a genuine kind of pride in what the lads have achieved,
Mm-hmm.
And I think you see that around Belfast, and even driving the Jeep, like I sometimes drive up in the Jeep to Belfast, and, it's some people come out to wave at it, and there's a real sense of pride across the community up there in terms of what they've done, and that they're...
It's like being connected to something. They're connected to it. They see it and they're going...
Yeah, and they're taking something from an area that's had a lot of challenges to an international place and being respected for what they do. And I think people are proud of that.
Which is good.
Yeah,
which is
for
good.
sure. Yeah.
Good man. Cheers. There you go. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So you have the movie, and then all of a sudden Michael Fassbender's in it. What was the conversations like with him?
To be like, so for my role, like, I wouldn't have, like, that was the film company. So I suppose the film company and the director Rich and Trevor Burney, one of the producers, like, they were kind of looking after who was going to be cast and things like that. And they did want to have, and they had a list of people, like, and you could probably guess who some of the other names were. They wanted a big, well-known Irish actor to play a role in the movie. And I think, and this is like, I wasn't involved directly in getting Michael into the film at all, but I think the fact that he had done the movie about Bobby Sands, Hunger, and the fact that he knows Irish, like he'd grown up in Kerry. I think there's a few things there that and apparently he loved the script. And then the lads got on really well. Like, he's actually like bang on fella. I've been out a couple of times.
I was just going to say that. Was there any sessions that you had out with him? Because he looks like it's a bit of crack.
I was like, we had a thing in London when we launched the album, the night before we launched the album, because the concept of the album was we were setting a pub called The Ruts. So we had this idea that we'd take a pub in London and it would be a shithole pub, and it was The Ruts, and the kind of pub the lads would like they like a pub that is cheap pints, and they're not looking for South William Street or anything like that.
Glam and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
or no, I shouldn't say South William Street because they like Grogan, but Dawson Street maybe is a better example.
I know what you're talking about. Look, my type of pub.
Harcourt Street maybe the best.
my type of pub.
So we took this pub, I can't remember the name, what's it called? It's called Molly Bloom's. And I think even the owner wouldn't mind me saying, like, it's a fairly wrecked pub, but like, we love that. So we put on a thing there where we had a few DJs and the pub, and he came in for the whole night. To be fair to Fassbender, he came in.
Probably just wanted a tiny bit of home, you know.
It was rammed with people, and it was fairly chaotic. And he came in for the whole night, had a great time, and it was great to have. Obviously, like it really helped with the film because the recognition of the name. But I think he plays a great and important role in it and brought so much to it. And I think the lads obviously love, like for Nisha in particular, like that scene with him and Nisha in the car. Like Nisha had never acted before.
I find that mad because they're so good in it, and even talking about the sex scenes and all that, everything was so believable in that movie that you kind of walked out going, "Fuck, is this part of their life, or are they acting it up and all that?"
No, they're just extremely talented. Like, you know, I think when you like, obviously when we talked about the film, like what were the risks with the film? Right, for me, a big risk with the film was that it was shit, and that a certain amount of people saw it, and because it was crap, they were like, the band are crap. That was a real concern I had. But the other risks, and maybe the bigger risk for people who funded it, was they never acted. It was half in Irish. It was about music. Music and sport don't translate well to film normally. And Rich had never directed a feature. He just done TV. So there was 4 huge, and probably the biggest of them all is these have never acted. But they took to it so well. And JJ, like DJ Profi, and like JJ's, for me, like they're all brilliant, but he's the best maybe of the 3. And obviously, normally in the band, he's in a mask. It's a different role. As
believable teacher.
Yeah, it's so good and so like probably like some of the stuff I mentioned earlier, like they're extremely talented, and to be able to do a feature-length film and do a one-on-one scene that Anisha did with Michael Fassbender, like who's obviously like one of the world's best actors. Yeah, just unbelievable. Getting the
BAFTA nod. Where were you? Did you know it was going to happen?
We sort of looked at it, and it's funny because I'm looking across, behind the camera, there's a picture of like there's statues of the Dubliners in here, and I remember there's a great interview with Ronnie Drew, and Ronnie Drew was asked about the destruction of Nelson's Column, and you'd assume, I think, that Ronnie would say the destruction of Nelson's Column was a good thing, and he says we should have left it. It was a captured trophy, which is a very kind of, it's a different way of looking at it. It has a lot of validity in itself, and I thought with some of these awards we kind of took the approach of like, you know, them going over there and being nominated for Best British Film, brilliant. Like you're going over there as an Irish person with an Irish film in the Irish language and taking awards. It was a bit of, you know, the lads were joking and kind of semi-serious for a bit of reparation, you know, for what's happened before. So, no, all that stuff, it's just a mad journey, that film, because it was just something that for so long was an idea, then it was happening, and then there's months of nothing because there's an edit, and then Sundance through to almost Oscars, BAFTAs, BIFAs, IFTAs. It was just so unexpected, and it's really been a class, to be fair.
What's the crack after now? So the movies now, it's kind of on a quiet time now. What happens next?
Yeah, lads are on tour a lot. So there's now Australia, New Zealand, Coachella, and then huge schedule of festivals through the summer. Fairview Park sold out in the summer in Dublin. 2-3 arenas. Second one's nearly sold out in December. So yeah, a bit focused on some new music to come. And just mainly back to like Kneecap as a band. I suppose the film just became bigger than I suppose anyone maybe thought. Anyone could have imagined, really. You know,
is it strange now that, you know, because of the success of Kneecap and all that, do you find that there are bands or those rap artists or whoever are coming over to you and going, "Is there any chance? Will you represent me?"
It's been one or two, and it's very flattering. Like, you know, because I think they're two weird industries, football and music. I think in both there's a lot of people, maybe particularly sometimes I see it with football agents, where I don't think they really care about the footballers a lot of the time. And I don't know loads of music managers, and I think the ones I do know are great. But I think there's a lot of they're so important to people. Like if you're like a musician, obviously my partner's a musician. It's a core part of who they are as people, and it's brilliant to do this with people you're friends with, and that happened really organically. Now people have asked me in really far. I don't have the time, and it's not something that I'm interested in doing, but it's really, like a flattering thing. And I do think that, you know, managers are really important in music, and maybe just with some artists, you'd hope that everyone ends up. I think there seems to be a lot of artists who need management. Do
you kind of feel, I've noticed now these days that like we've gone away from, you know, the boy band act or even the traditional music. Like Irish people are starting to open their ears to rap artists in classic, like it's any sort of genre now.
I think there's a real confidence in Irish people, just in terms of like, you know, we take whether it's, you think of like Glastonbury last year, and confidence in two parts. So at Glastonbury last year there was Seema, Mary Wallopers, Lankum, Kojak, Kneecap, Fontaines. I'm going to miss loads of others, right? But there's 5 or 6. Every one of them spoke about Palestine. Every single one of those acts spoke about Palestine at Glastonbury when other people didn't. And also, all of those acts were doing, whether it was their own accent or their own style of music, or whether it was like Lancome taking, traditional and folk music to a whole new place, whether it's Fontaines, like really like one of the biggest bands in the world doing it in such an authentic way. Murray Wallopers, taking probably, it's a mix, maybe the Pogues, the Dubliners, but doing it in their own way, very confident in who they are. Kneecap, obviously, we've spoken about, Seema, all of these artists, Kojak, and in different genres, but a real confidence in what they're doing, and not trying to. It's
refreshing, though, isn't it? Like they're not abiding by the rules of what a pop star or a rap star should be.
Well, they're not trying to emulate. I think maybe for a lot of and it maybe still happens with some artists, but not so much in Ireland, where they're not trying to see something that's in America or in England and copy it. They're taking inspiration from genres and putting their own, and through whether that's life experience, accent, politics, all of these are an important mix, and putting, right, this is how we're going to do it. And people are responding to it, because that's not an Irish festival either.
Is it hard as a manager to control that, because you're still managing, just say, these 3 lads, and even Bohs as well, you've got a big job there. You're going to go on Twitter, you're going to go on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. There's still going to be dicks that are going to be saying awful things. How do you control that for them? Because you're the person.
I don't know, the lads are like, they're fine with that. Like, I suppose you think of the lads
like do they run things by you? Like, do they say to you, look, this yoke is after saying something?
No, we'll have discussions, but I think they're very sure and confident in who they are, as people. Liam, to his massive credit, is not on social media. I think that's like, to have, I suppose, to be that secure in yourself in your mid-20s, given the success Liam has had, I admire that. He doesn't.
It's a great day. It's brilliant, isn't it?
I think doesn't need it, and there's nothing like, obviously I'm on social media. Nisha and JJ are. I think that's the norm. But like, yeah, the lad. No, it's not something that really comes up. I think they're clear on who they are, and some of what they represent pisses people off. Whatever, like, that's not, that's for people to get angry about.
What does your family think of everything? Like when they see you and they're like, you've traveled the world, you've had the 9-to-5 job, now you're at Bohs, you're at Kneecap. Like, they must be so proud.
Yeah, I never really thought about that, and I probably think you should spend a little bit more time, at home. And I am conscious of that too, in terms of just, became a dad a couple of years ago, but it's, like, I'm.
Are they in a pub saying, that's me son?
I don't know, actually. I've never really thought about that. I think, look, I suppose, like, my parents were really good parents growing up. They would have been important when we were growing up to watch the news, say. So, like, our members, we'd watch the news, and my dad would listen to the news. So, and I would have hated that. But then you realise suddenly you're soaking all this stuff in. So being aware, they would have been politically aware, but they would have had an outlook that you should do stuff that you enjoy if you can. But like I've said before in interviews, like, neither of my parents did their leaving cert. Like, we didn't really have a lot growing up. But we had a great childhood. And that could, like, change a little bit as I got older. But like I grew up in Finglas, had a brilliant childhood. Both my parents are from Dublin, from working class areas of Dublin. But we would have had a sense, I suppose, of injustice, but also a sense that if you're going to go out and live your life, like, do stuff that is important to you and that you enjoy and that isn't motivated by money.
And keeps you going constantly.
Yeah, I think if you set out to do stuff just motivated by money, if you set out to look at, well, I'm going to do this because I can earn that, you've missed the whole point of life at the end of the day. Like.
Dan, do you know what? It has been incredible chatting to you today.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for chatting to us.